TikTok is getting sued in the US this week over potentially hurting children's mental health. As reported by The Guardian, it sounds as if that there was a investigation brought into the TikTok algorithm as a whole, so this infinitely scrolling feed in March 22, where a bunch of different, and I'll leave the quote on screen, but also leave it down in the description down below if you want to read in more detail. A lot of states in America are going after potentially TikTok for the potential issues or potential concerns around how having an infinite scrolling feed on an impressionable mind can really rot their attention span, but also really have an issue and concern regarding their mental health as well. The key points to take away from the lawsuit seems to be that they're taking aim at this interest-based graph rather than a social-based graph that would be traditionally seen on your LinkedIn, your Facebooks, etc. Traditionally, the social media platforms were social based, which means that more comments, more interaction, etc., the better the post does. When TikTok launched, they created what's known as an interest-based graph. Therefore, you're only served content that you're interested in. YouTube Shorts do the same thing. And we're seeing this with Instagram Reels, we're seeing this with Facebook Reels as well, that it is showcasing and really pushing people to what they're more interested in rather than specifically. And it is a greater equalizer when it comes to these social platforms, because it doesn't really matter how many followers you have specifically. It doesn't really matter how many comments or likes or shares you get. Yeah, that helps, but actually what's more important is the engagement on the piece of content to then potentially serve it to a brand new audience. The key points to take away from the lawsuit is also by taking aim at the the interest-based graph, that rather than a social-based graph, creating a never-ending feed of content in the TikTok feed that you would, quote, enjoy, end quote, told users on the platform. There has also been further talks about adding warning labels that we've previously covered in the show as well to the apps and percentage of the content. The same worries have been talked about in regards to the gaming sphere regarding the loot boxes phenomena as well, which kind of is like it can get people hooked on gambling, and it can be quite a concern regarding gambling. However, with the looming potential full ban going into effect within the new year, there's a lot of legal steps behind that they're questioning and they're not necessarily moving forward with at the moment, because they're waiting to see what happens with the US election. Depending on who wins, it will likely change whether the ban is going ahead or not. So I think for me, this is a conversation again around, is it down to the child? Is it down to the parent? Is it down to the platform? Is it down to the government to step in? Because all TikTok, in my point of view, yes, we need to have this conversation about mental health. Yes, we should have. Of course, we should need to protect our children on the internet and look after their mental health. But surely that should be down to, creating safeguards in these apps to mean that a child isn't going to be able to infinitely scroll for hours and hours and hours and go down that infinite rabbit hole. Or is it the parents who should step in and say, look, you've been on your phone for X amount of time, let's go and do something else, let's go and do this, XYZ. Is that the issue? Or, failing that, does it have to be the government in this case? And that's why I think the lawsuit is going to be kind of pushing the government to potentially regulate these social media platforms more, to be able to go after this, to be able to have, in theory, there should be a TikTok Kids app that has different restrictions, has parental controls, etc. And we've talked about in the show before how TikTok is going out of its way to try and protect children, try and protect their mental health. They're putting in, committees and their groups and parental controls and safeguards and stuff in place. But is the lawsuit potentially poking at a kind of feed of opportunity when it comes to content creation and creating attention, right? Which is what advertising is. It's constant backwards and forwards between advertisers and then the safety side of it from kids. But I think for me, we have to be very careful not to put the whole blame and necessarily always wanting to pursue it legally, because surely there should be a level of responsibility in allowing one's child to be on social media for this amount of time. As I said, and I'll leave it with this, but whose responsibility is it? Is it the platform to put those safeguards in place? Is it down to the government to put those in place? Or is it actually down to being a responsible parent to not allow your children to be on social media for that much time?